Good evening, America, and welcome to your Friday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. Yes, we made it through a very busy week, and by the way, it ended on a very busy note, including some sad news. Today, former Supreme Court Associate Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the very first woman to be confirmed to the High Court, passed away at the age of 93, just a few days after Henry Kissinger, the most famous diplomats in America, did the same, passed away as well. Appointed by President Reagan in 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor went on to serve for several decades before ultimately retiring in 2006. We, of course, are keeping her family and colleagues in our prayers today and throughout. We'll have a celebration of her life day. Meanwhile, in some other historic news, controversial freshman Republican House member George Santos became the sixth member who has been expelled from Congress. In fact, the third since the Civil War. We'll have former New York Congressman and GOP gubernatorial nominee Lee Zeldin to referee that news in just a few minutes. But now I'm going to turn things over to my amazing co-host who anchors every day from Los Angeles. Amanda Head joins us right now. Amanda, what else is going on?
Good evening, John. Yes, not only do we have former Congressman Lee Zeldin on this George Santos news, but later in the hour, we're also going to have an unfiltered conversation over this historic expulsion with Santos's former communications director, Nasa Woomer. However, John, this news of expulsion certainly makes me wonder how the U.S. Senate is going to proceed with New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, who arguably committed worse crimes than what is alleged, yet to be proven, against George Santos. Nevertheless, there are many other headlines to get to, including a new report that shows consumers are loving the large vehicles these days. I passed a Ford Raptor on the way to work today that was... Anyway, that may be one of the main reasons why electric vehicles aren't being purchased. But our history often shows that when you force the American people to do something, they very well will do the exact opposite thing. And according to this new consumer report, Biden's very hard push for the Green New Deal policies and adopting all electric everything shows just that. Now, meanwhile, the drama continues up on Capitol Hill, as Senator Marsha Blackburn requested that the Senate Judiciary Committee subpoena the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs due to her concerns about the human trafficking that has gone on. However, Democrat Senator Dick Durbin, who chairs that committee, shot down her request. And now the Tennessee Republican is wondering what the Democrats are trying to hide. Whether the House takes this up or not remains to be seen. But I think after hearing Congressman Ralph Norman last night say they often major in the minor issues, there may be other pressing issues to solve before the end of this year. But, John, you have your ear to the ground there on Capitol Hill and in Washington, D.C. What other breaking news do we need to bat?
Well, listen, a lot of fallout today from the Cassidy Hutchinson revelations that we broke here on the show last night. Lawyers involved in the January 6th committee investigations, the criminal cases, all saying this is going to become a major issue come the January 6th prosecutions and trials that are going to come up in the next year. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that. But I think everyone is focused on today's momentous events, the loss of a very historic trailblazer in American history, Sandra Day O'Connor, and, of course, only the third expulsion from the U.S. House of Representatives since the Civil War. Hasn't happened in at least 2 decades, in fact. And the first time in modern history that someone wasn't even convicted before they were expelled. That's a lot to take in today, and I think folks are going to want to get right to the news. So with that, let's bring in our first guest, former Congressman Lee Zeldin. He knows New York better than anyone I know, and he joins us right now. Sir, good to have you on the show.
It's great to be with you.
All right, so I don't think this is an unexpected vote. The momentum has been building for a few weeks, but there's a remarkable contrast, right? Senate Democrats want to keep their majority in the Senate, so they don't vote to expel Bob Menendez. Republicans do the principal thing. They feel like this guy has done too much to deserve to stay in the chamber. They throw it out, even though it shrinks their majority. Does that play out with voters, you think, the contrast between the two parties?
I think that it puts the House Republicans in a position where they're going to be able to go on offense against House Democrats, quite frankly, for a lot of examples of lacking moral clarity. And you see it play out. I know that you have Chairman Comer coming on as you move forward with an impeachment deposition of Hunter Biden, for example. It's something that you can defend when Adam Schiff was following the same exact process when they were trying to impeach President Trump. As House Republicans go forward, they are going to be able to be more confidently and consistently on offense to tackle a lot of the weaknesses, vulnerabilities of House Democrats. And they probably just had enough of the George Santos saga. Many House Republicans voted to keep him. Many others voted to get rid of him. Now there's a special election that'll be coming up in New York. And I think that House Republicans should do all that they can to be on offense and try to hold the seat. They shouldn't give up on it.
Yeah, that's a
right.
good point.
Well, and Congressman, you gave us some numbers before we came to air that I want to make sure I wrote them down properly and help me understand this, because it kind of seems like two different sides have staked a claim over this district. This was a district that you won by 12 points, but Joe Biden won it by 8 points. Please help me understand that.
Yeah, this district has been trending to the right over the course of the last few years. In 2021, in Nassau County, which is a large bulk of the 3rd Congressional District, they elected a Republican county executive, so the Democratic incumbent was ousted. Bruce Blakeman was elected. The town of North Hempstead, which is on the north shore of Nassau County, a very Democrat district, actually voted for the Republican candidate, Jen DeSena. In northwest Nassau County, a very heavily Democrat county legislative district, Mazi Pilip, the Republican, won that seat in 21. She's a former IDF paratrooper. These are Republicans who were able to convince Democrats and independents to go a different direction. So that trend after 2020, you start seeing the first signs of it in 2021. In 2022, we crushed the 3rd Congressional District in our race for governor against Kathy Hochul. That was better than a 56-44 gap. We won by a little bit over 12 points. We saw strong support. A lot of down ballot candidates had a lot of success. We saw that at the House level, as was played out with the congressional seat. In 2023, the local elections that had just passed, the names that I just referenced for you, Jen DeSena, she gets reelected. Mazi Pilip, she gets reelected. The 3rd Congressional District in Nassau County continues this trend of independents and even some Democrats voting Republican. I would also add that the Nassau County Republican Committee, and it's led by Chairman Joe Cairo, I would put them up against any county Republican committee chair and county committee anywhere else in the country. It could be in the reddest state, and you'd be hard pressed to find a county that is as strong and well organized, well mobilized as the Nassau County Republican Committee is right now. So the Democrats have the voter registration in that seat as they head to a special election, but I would not count out at all the ability of both the Republicans to be able to better mobilize and organize. And I would also not count out the fact that right now, independents and Democrats are very unhappy with the direction of the state. We see it within New York City and the country nationally. And a lot of Democrats are disenfranchised and have shown a willingness now for multiple elections to vote Republican.
Yeah, that's it, John. When Republicans come to me and say, I'm depressed about the election results, I keep saying, keep an eye on what is going on in New York. Remember what Lee Zeldin did. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic if you're a conservative about what's happening in New York. Now, I want to ask you, do you have any guess who might be a strong Republican candidate for the seat in the special election? And then what are the issues you'd recommend that candidate to focus on to try to win the seat in the special election?
Well, first off, it feels like there are about 1,000 Republicans who have stepped up. So there are so many people who have said that they're interested in running. That's great. That's something that will have to play out in a screening process for the county Republican committees to hear from these candidates. In New York, we have third parties. So there will be a conservative party role to play as well. I will be supportive of whoever the Republican candidate is who gets nominated as a result of that process. Understand New York law here with the special election. The governor is going to call a special election. The parties pick the candidate. And I am sure that that there will be a process to try to pick the best possible candidate to win this seat. And there will be an extensive vetting to make sure that we don't have a repeat of the Santos saga. So to the second part of your question, while we don't know exactly who the candidate is going to be just yet, that you need to focus on the issues that matter most to voters. And right now, New Yorkers are hitting their breaking point and they're deciding to flee the state because of the cost of living, concerns about safety, attacks on freedom, concern about the quality of education in our schools. And right now, we see a new top three issue, and for many, a top one issue, in the migrant crisis, which has made its way to New York. It's impacting quality of life. So for the Republican candidate to be thinking about messaging, I don't think you need to look for what is the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th most important issue to voters. Yeah. What are the top 3, 4, 5 issues? And these are issues that we're on the right side of. If it is about making our streets safer, life in New York more affordable, to defend freedom, to control our southern border, to make sure that we have that check on Biden and Schumer and a balance of power in Washington, really on all of the fronts that I think are very important to voters right now. The Republicans have the upper edge on the messaging. Don't overthink it. Just focus on what voters are telling you is most important to them.
Yeah, so important.
Well, and Congressman, with respect to cost of living, yesterday on the show, we talked about these hardship withdrawals from folks' IRA. It's up 30%. The number one reason cited was risk of eviction or foreclosure. But there's another side of this that is becoming untenable, and that is for businesses in New York. $4.4 billion, which is more than Disney paid for the Marvel franchise. That's the amount of merchandise that was stolen through these criminal shoplifting rings. That's got to be another unifying topic on both sides of the aisle.
Oh, you're absolutely right. When I was in the state Senate a decade ago, I was the chair of the Consumer Protection Committee. So organized retail crime, this is not a new thing. Organized retail crime was an issue back then. The way that it worked then was that the retailers would come to me and say, this is what we need in order to tackle organized retail crime. And they would have a legislative agenda, and then we would pass it. What happens now is that you have the retailers who are going to the state legislature, going to the governor, saying, this is our agenda, this is what we need to stop it. And it seems like this state capitol goes in the opposite direction every time. New York now has implemented cashless bail. It's the only state in the entire country that doesn't give judges discretion to weigh dangerousness. We have district attorneys who are getting elected who are refusing to enforce the law, DAs who think that that stands for defense attorney, not district attorney. We have a lack of support for law enforcement. And we've reached a point where retailers don't feel like they can put together a great agenda to actually tackle organized retail crime and have the full support of elected officials. Instead, they're getting stonewalled by elected officials who feel like the state hasn't gone far enough in passing enough pro-criminal laws. So there's, you get to the point where you're locking up toothpaste instead of criminals. You're losing inventory. You feel helpless without government having your back. And you decide that it's going to get worse, not better. So you just close your doors. It impacts quality of life for customers where they might be losing the business altogether in their community. The jobs that end up getting lost, the higher cost of goods for the rest of us who actually pay for what we take out of that location. And it impacts the local economy. It impacts the amount of tax receipts by government. And when these businesses fold or when these businesses move, this isn't just putting a state or community in timeout. Nope. They're saying, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah. Locking up toothpaste instead of criminals. I'm going to remember that line. That's a great expression of what the Democrats have created. Congressman Lee Zeldin, always a great honor to have you on. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but don't go anywhere. James Comer, the man leading the impeachment inquiry in the House.
Welcome back, America. John and his team over at Just the News continue to uncover so many unbelievable revelations related to the alleged money laundering schemes between the Biden family members and foreign businesses. And I think John would agree with me when I say that a lot of this great reporting stems directly from the amazing investigative work that the House Oversight Committee continues to conduct day in and day out. And I think after the latest revelation of a bank's money laundering investigator flagging serious concerns over money that the first son received, I think it's time to get an update from the source directly. So joining us now is Kentucky Congressman and House Oversight Chairman James Comer. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Sir, you have subpoenaed a number of individuals who are scheduled to come up and have a meeting with you up on Capitol Hill in front of House Oversight, one of which, of course, is Hunter Biden. He wanted it to be public. And Democrats are accusing Republicans of being on the losing end of a political game of chicken, insisting that it be private for the first time around. But I know there's been a set of rules for each of these witnesses who have come forward to testify. Why does Hunter Biden think that he's the exception?
Well, look, Hunter Biden's received special treatment his entire life. Every government agency that should have caught the crimes the Bidens have been committing for years were told to stand down. And they think they can bully the oversight committee and reset the rules. And that's not going to happen. We're going to treat this investigation like every congressional investigation in recent memory has been treated. You come in for a deposition, then you do the public hearing. All of our depositions are transparent. We release the transcripts. The only time we haven't released anything in a transcript since I've been chairman is when it pertained to classified information. So every American will know exactly what Hunter Biden says in this deposition. And the reason we have to do a deposition is simple. If you have a committee hearing and that's all you agree to do, and we have 25 committee members, we might get 35, maybe 40 questions in, going 5 minutes for the Republicans, 5 minutes for the Democrats. We've got 25 opportunities with 5 minutes. But if you do a deposition where the Republicans get an hour and then the Democrats get an hour, then the Republicans get another hour, we can ask between 500 and 600 questions to Hunter Biden. We have tens of thousands of pages of bank statements. We have thousands of pages of emails. We have hundreds of specific questions about specific transactions and specific meetings that the Bidens had with our enemies around the world where they received millions of dollars. You can't get all of that in a committee hearing. We will have the committee hearing, but we've got to have the deposition. He is the key witness to all of the Biden crimes. So the subpoena called for him to show up in this office on December 13th for a deposition. I expect to see Hunter Biden in this office for a deposition, which we will release the transcripts in a 100% transparent manner, just like everything we've released thus far in the 9-month investigation.
Yeah. Sir, in the case that he doesn't, I know you're very serious about this. You're prepared to go all the way to court to enforce this subpoena, correct?
Absolutely. We just had a meeting today. I suspect that the House of Representatives will formally vote to formalize the impeachment inquiry. This is the exact same process that Pelosi took during her impeachment. And, they're not going to be able to have a leg to stand on in court if they try to defy our subpoenas. We have conducted this investigation the right way. We've done it by the book, John. We've made sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. We've accumulated a mountain of evidence of criminal wrongdoing by the Biden family. Now it's in the final stages. And the final stages, like any major investigation, involve depositions.
Yeah,
incredible.
No doubt.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this money laundering investigators report, because there was something in there that was talking about children of political figures and the propensity on the part of Chinese entities to target those. And Hunter Biden obviously was targeted as what they call a PEP, a politically exposed person. But in this context, with everything that you and John have revealed about the Biden family and their maneuverings with China, it kind of seems like PEP is just a fancy acronym for blackmailable.
Yeah, well, look, anyone that watches the news, anyone that has any level of intelligence knows that the way China has been getting the foot in the door is they've been buying off politicians. They've been buying access. And one way they do that is through family members. And then that way the politician can claim the plausible deniability. They look for vulnerable family members. There's no one more vulnerable than Hunter Biden in 2018. He's on drugs. He's spending money on prostitutes left and right. He's going on, $100,000 spending sprees. He's got Porsche. He's got everything in the world, diamonds. I mean, he's living a high lifestyle. And they know that he's like selling access to his father. He did it in Ukraine when he got the prosecutor fired at Burisma. So China's like, hey, this is the perfect guy. We're gonna load him up. And the bank examiner realized this. He's like, okay, the vice president's son just got a $5 million wire into a dormant account from a shell company. This stands out like a sore thumb. We want to contact him and see what did you do? What is this $5 million? And he apparently tells them it's a loan. And they're like, they did the same thing I did. This is what bankers do. Oh, it's a loan. Okay, we'll provide the loan documents. They couldn't do that because it wasn't a loan. Okay, it was a wire from China. And then they noticed he said he was running an investment company. Well, it didn't have any investments. So Hunter Biden was running an investment company with no investments. He had a shell company with no asset or no defined purpose. And they're like, this is not good. He's taking 58% of this loan or investment, whatever it is, and taking it out in the form of fees that he and other Biden family members receive. Everything in that one paragraph is what we've been saying for the last 8 months. The Bidens had shell companies. They were taking money from our enemies around the world for no purpose. And we are concerned that this is a national security risk because Joe Biden could be compromised to China because of all the money they paid the family, that 40,000 of which went into Joe Biden's back pocket.
Yeah, no, it's really remarkable. Sir, there is now a long body of records that your team has come up with showing that bankers were concerned. First in 2015 at Morgan Stanley. By the time 2016 rolls around, they're sending things to the SEC, whistleblower complaint. There's another whistleblower complaint in 18. There's these documents. The banking system did its job. It kept flagging Hunter and Joe and James Biden's transactions. What does it say about the Treasury Department and the federal bureaucracy that they didn't react to these reports, that there was no inquiries and investigations that we can find at least until 2019?
It shows there was a cover-up, John, and I understand banking. And when I first learned that there were over 150 suspicious activity reports, and that was first discovered in the Grassley and Johnson report, as someone with a banking background, I'm like, my God, guys, when I was talking to the oversight staff, this is a big deal. No one has more than one or two suspicious activity reports, and these are criminals that get them. When you're talking about 150, and then we go to Treasury, John, and we find there are actually 170, and then that they are subjects of another 50. So there's 220 suspicious activity reports in Treasury flagging potential criminal behavior by one family. If that family is any family in America whose last name is not Biden, they would already be in prison. They would have at least had their day in court. Every instance, the banks did what they were supposed to do. We have the bank records. Anytime we see something that stands out, you can bet your whatever that the bank did what it was supposed to do. And they contacted the Treasury Cabinet saying, look, our client has potentially committed a crime. That's why they got 170 suspicious activity reports. We have the bank records. The banks did what they were supposed to do. And that's why, John, the banks have cooperated with us.
Yeah.
We've been obstructed at every turn. We've been obstructed by the government agencies. We've been obstructed by the Biden legal team. One group that hasn't obstructed us are the banks, because the banks want us to have it. The banks are frustrated that this family's been treated differently. The banks know that this is no good. This is criminal activity. They weren't paying taxes. They were laundering money. They were taking money from our enemies around the world for all practical purposes. The Bidens were taking bribes, and they wanted us to have the information. So I think the banks did exactly what they were supposed to do. It's another example of a government cover-up to protect the Biden family.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, just very quickly before we go, I know that you are treating this with the seriousness of a court case, but it's not. Therefore, there's no obligation for a discovery phase wherein you have to reveal all the materials you have. Is it a political plan going forward or an investigative plan going forward to ask some of these questions pertaining to the documents you have of these witnesses, wait until they answer, and then say, oh, actually, I have the receipt?
That's a pretty good guess, Amanda. That's kind of what we want. We have the evidence, and look, you got all these millions of dollars coming in from these shady people in adversarial countries around the world. We have simple questions. What did you do to receive this $350,000 wire? What was Joe Biden's involvement in this particular transaction? I noticed he said he never met with them, but here's a picture. There was no report that you flew on Air Force Two to meet with him, but lo and behold, we see this picture of you getting out of Air Force Two. What is your knowledge and involvement? What is your family's knowledge and involvement? Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, man. Mr. Chairman, we know you have to hop on a plane. We appreciate you being here once again and all of the work that you are doing. And we'll have you back on again very soon. Everybody, we're going to take a very quick commercial break, and we'll see you just on the other side.
Welcome back, America. This has been a momentous week in news. We've lost some huge figures like Henry Kissinger, Sandra Day O'Connor, big developments in Congress, expulsion of a member of Congress for the first time in a quarter century. But there were also some incredible revelations about the state of censorship in America. More and more evidence that our government is stepping on the free speech rights of Americans, from the military to the CDC, and hitting all the platforms, including YouTube. That was a big one that came out just this week. Some subpoenas by Jim Jordan, the House Judiciary Committee, going out to White House officials who also may have been in the game. There is no better expert on the issue of censorship in this great country than our next guest. Mike Benz is the executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, and I believe the driving force behind so many of the extraordinary, almost saw-whipping revelations that have come out about free speech infringements in America. And he joins us right now. Mike, great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks, Amanda.
There were some big ones this week. We go back now. It wasn't just the COVID 2020 election censorship. It starts in 2018 at the military. YouTube got in the game. Everywhere we look, the apparatus and size of a large censorship machine, private, public, government driven, is really sitting before us. Bring us up to speed on what you think the most important developments have been over the last few days.
Sure. So, we've had three things happen in quick succession where Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi published these Cyber Threat Intelligence League files around a network of U.S. and U.K. military contractors who began forming misinfosec communities, essentially little censorship whole of society cells within the U.S. In 2018 to have a sort of Pentagon-driven domestic censorship coordination effort. Then you had Jim Jordan with the Google files, the YouTube files, akin to the Facebook files that came out several months ago, which were subpoenaed. And then you had these public hearings just yesterday. So that's three pretty major things in a week, each of which creates its own little cleavages and pressure on censorship industry apparatchiks who scatter from the sun as a vampire does from sunlight. But I should say that perhaps one of the most interesting developments of this has been the popularity of the Schellenberger and Taibbi thesis around the military involvement in the censorship industry. And I'd like to add to that it goes significantly before 2018. Much of this grew out of the 2014 Maidan effort from the State Department and the military response to the Crimea annexation and the breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine, where NATO declared this doctrine of from tanks to tweets and had developed this whole hybrid warfare doctrine that really gave rise to this 2018 Pentagon censorship network that Schellenberger and Taibbi talk about, which is to say that this didn't just come out of nowhere. It wasn't like the Pentagon just suddenly had an epiphany in 2018 and started setting down censorship cells. This came out of a military perception that civilian-run media would lead to the overturning of the rules-based international order, and the EU would come apart and NATO would come apart if the military did not move into the media.
Like so many things in the Biden administration, it started with Obama, right?
Yes.
Surprise, surprise, right on brand. I wanted to ask you, though, because there's something that's so starkly concerning about this, which is that this Cyber Threat Intelligence League, which sounds like an amalgamation between Ayn Rand and Marvel Universe. It's highly dystopic, but it's housed under DHS, Department of Homeland Security. So the nature of this program itself and the fact that it's housed under Homeland Security tells me that they consider those of us who were using the naughty words and the naughty ideas and the naughty hashtags that we are actually threats to national security.
Yeah, this is a common trick that they use. They merge defense, which is supposed to be foreign-facing and is empowered to do all sorts of Department of Dirty Trick stuff not allowed on U.S. citizens. They merge defense with Homeland Security. And you see this time and time again. For example, the National Science Foundation works very, very, very closely with DARPA. In fact, many times when the military wants to do a project but has to sort of scale it for civilian sort of commercial grade efforts, they basically funnel a pipeline from DARPA to the National Science Foundation to give it a sort of nice civilian facing front. There's a very similar thing with how the Pentagon interacts with the Department of Homeland Security. to do very similar things. Now, of course, DHS would be the exact place that grew CISA and would say that cognitive infrastructure is critical infrastructure. But this is essentially the laundering mechanism to bring our foreign-facing Department of Justice home.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I think a lot of people think, well, hey, the military can't be deployed against Americans. There's a Posse Comitatus Act, all these different laws that say, hey, military, State Department, you don't touch individual citizens. I experienced the State Department go after my social media after the 2019 things, but are some of these lines, these legal protections we all thought we had, perhaps blurred in this era of censorship?
Yes, they've done the same trick that the CIA used to do in the 1950s and 60s, still does today, but with a lot less oversight, is essentially a money laundering type operation. They conceal things through essentially little cutout shells and pass-throughs, and you can launder from the Pentagon into NGOs and into for-profit companies that have ex-Pentagon officials, so to speak, and into other government agencies that have a domestic predicate to operate. And this is exactly what you see here. Now, from the Pentagon's perspective, there's sort of a doctrine with how our military sees war, which is comprising four theaters. You have the strategic, the tactical, the logistical, and the political. And there are four different ways to win or lose a war. And starting with the U.S. left-wing domestic response to the Vietnam War, where you had student opposition, you had media opposition, you had university faculty opposition to the military-industrial complex, there became an increasing attention to the political aspects that drive war within our own defense sector. This is part of why George Bush I made sure to onboard favorable media companies like the newly born CNN into the Iraq War. And really made an effort to onboard and develop this kind of whole of society approach to ensure that the political dynamic to war is never the reason we lose. This is the famous line when we did the first Gulf War that we finally kicked Vietnam syndrome. Well, you see this now on steroids with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and really starting out of the original Maidan kerfuffle in 2014 was the military became obsessed with the fear of losing hearts and minds, and that there would not be the political will to provide the funding, to provide boots on the ground. And so the military capture of the political element is something that is now, I don't want to say all but complete, but it is now at such a threatening degree that we are at risk of having a civilian-run government, let alone a civilian-run media.
It's frightening.
It's unreal. And Mike, as I was reading through these documents, there seems to have emerged an ideology surrounding censorship. And I saw some phrases like, if we don't get caught, it's legal. And then there was another one that, this motley crew of big bros put this phrase out there, repetition is truth. And, when I was growing up in school, dystopic tales like 1984 by George Orwell, they were cautionary tales. It almost seems like it's now become a playbook.
Yeah, that sounds eerily close to a Goebbels quote. It's this is something that, frankly, they know because this is their job. These people's jobs, the people who are in charge of domestic censorship, their professional specialty, their special set of skills is overthrowing governments around the world using these kind of tactics, mobilizing social media revolutions by getting tens or hundreds of thousands of people in a foreign country on payroll through the university system, mobilizing them on social media. This has been a playbook that our State Department developed in 2007 when the smartphone came out. And Jared Cohen, who went on to run Google Jigsaw, which became sort of the censorship arm of YouTube, rolled this out for the State Department. So they're professional government topplers, and now they're doing it here.
It's unbelievable. And Mike, we wouldn't know half of it if it weren't for the great work you and your foundation are doing. We owe you a great debt of gratitude. Thanks for spending some time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So we're going to go here because when we return, Amanda and I will be talking about George Santos and other chaos up on Capitol Hill. But first, a couple messages from our great sponsors.
Welcome back, America. The United States House of Representatives has officially voted to affirm the expulsion of Republican New York Congressman George Santos, a vote of 311 to 114 with 2 voting present. Now, this comes just a few weeks after the House Ethics Committee released their final report that showed on the last page that Congressman Santos failed to meaningfully engage with the committee, as well as their referral to the DOJ, which includes evidence of alleged violations beyond those that the New York Republican is already charged with. Now, some say that this is a historic day. Others say it's going to come back to bite them. But here's a quick clip from his press conference earlier. Check it out.
The House. Now, if the House wants to start different precedent and expel me, that is going to be the undoing of a lot of members of this body, because this will haunt them in the future, where mere allegations are sufficient to have members removed from office when duly elected by their people in their respective states and districts.
Not to mention a slim majority made even slimmer. Joining us now is Nasa Woomer. She spent a lot of time with the former congressman as his communications director before publicly resigning several months ago. Nasa, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I just want to get your first reaction to this.
I'm actually very surprised that this passed today, and I'm sure there are people that are very disappointed with the situation. But having worked for him personally, I believe that integrity won today. This will obviously be a very even slimmer majority for a short term, but in the long term, I think this will actually be a greater benefit to House Republicans as we go into the 2024 election cycle.
Yeah. And Nasa, there's this interesting contrast, right? Because the Senate Democrats, also with a very slim majority, they didn't want to get rid of Bob Menendez. The Republicans work with Democrats to get rid of George Santos. Does that play out in the long term to the advantage of Republicans, seeing the contrast between the two parties?
I think that's a really good point that you make. Senator Menendez does not deserve to be in the Senate either. And I hope what happened today actually does serve as a great example for the Senate to put through the same type of process that Congressman, or should I say now former Congressman George Santos had been through. Chairman Guest and the Committee on House Ethics had put through a very thorough and transparent investigation into the former congressman, and the Senate should be doing the exact same thing. So I do hope that they hold Menendez equally as accountable as George Santos.
Yeah. But if we're going to talk about holding people equally accountable, I look at the list of folks who a lot of people could argue deserve to be expelled. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Adam Schiff, Jamal Bowman. They weren't expelled, but Republicans were able to rally around expelling one of their own.
Again, this should once again serve as a prime example that if Republicans are stepping up to the plate and expelling one of their own, then House Democrats should be able to do the exact same thing, because this was not something that House Republicans were looking to do. It was not an easy thing to do. And that's why I said that integrity won today, which will bode extremely well for House Republicans. And once again, House Democrats should take a note from today's playbook.
Oh, that's a good point, Nathan.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about this. This drama has shocked a lot of people, and we've seen all the behavior of George Santos. Mm-hmm. You get this amazing job. You come to Washington. You're going to be a part of something exciting. Mm-hmm. When did you realize I didn't sign up for whatever this is?
Well, good point. But one thing, so before I took this job, just to be clear, I was working for former Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker's administration. Right. And so I had this, the impression that I got of him in the beginning was this was a rising star. This was someone who was going to do great things for younger Republicans. And when I met him, he actually, not kidding, he wanted to become a very well-known figure, something like AOC. And then less than 2 weeks later, the New York Times article came out. And I guess the joke was on him. He officially became a big celebrity, I guess is the best way to put it. So, but if at the end of the day, though, even though I took on this position, the one thing I can say is that it made me a stronger communications professional. Crisis communications is now pretty much ingrained in my blood, and I think I can handle anything that can come my way at
I'm
this
pretty
point.
sure of that. Yeah. Nothing more.
Can I
different
just
than
point out with that line of questioning turned John Solomon into Jerry Springer? Maybe that's what JS Report stands for. Oh, so much scandal surrounding this story. I'm just kidding, John. You're very far from that.
You're right about it.
Very quickly before we go, though, we got about a minute. He's no longer a congressman, but as you said, he loves the limelight. Where do you expect him to go next?
Hopefully, well, he's a former drag queen, so maybe Dancing with the Stars could be a possibility. Who knows? If there is a book deal, Harry and Meghan also had book deals as well, and fiction is a very popular genre. And other than that, we just have to wait and see what happens in terms of his upcoming court date, but it won't be until September of 2024, and see how that will pan out for him.
Yeah, and very quickly, you have a book coming out, don't you, about your experience?
I would love to write a book about my experience, and if I do, I'm more than happy to come back and discuss it with you.
We'll take you up on that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We will bring you back on to talk about that. Absolutely.
Anytime.
Nasa, we appreciate your time today. We appreciate you pulling back the curtain and give us a view into all of this. We'll have you back on again very soon. And when we come back, Michael Patrick Leahy of the Tennessee Star is going to rejoin our show to discuss his latest pursuit of the truth regarding the Tennessee Christian school shooter's motives. But before that, check out this exclusive offer out from the Birch Gold Group, and we'll catch you on the other side of these commercials.
Hello, America. Worried about the volatile economy and the volatile stock market? Well, I got an idea for you. Diversify your savings with precious metals while stockpiling silver in your home safe. It's Birch Gold Group's most popular special of the year. Now through December 22nd. For every $5,000 you spend with Birch Gold, they'll send you a 1-ounce Silver Eagle coin for free. All you got to do, text Just News to 989898 to claim your eligibility right now. You can purchase gold and silver and have it shipped directly to your home, or you could also have one of Birch Gold's precious metal specialists help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold for no money out of pocket. And they'll send you free silver for every $5,000 you purchase. So keep it up for yourself or give it something for real value as a stocking stuffer this year. Just text the keyword Just News to 989898 to claim your eligibility. Now, with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers, myself included, now is the best time to buy gold from Birch Gold. All you got to do, text the word Just News to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver on qualifying purchases, but do it before December 22nd. That's when the offer ends. Standard text messages and data rates may apply. Welcome back, everybody. It gets harder and harder to get the truth for the American people. We have to oftentimes fight for it, go to court to get evidence that used to be able to be gotten very simply. One of my good friends down in Tennessee, Michael Patrick Leahy, he runs the Star News Network, which includes the Tennessee Star, and he has been working through the court system to try to get the American people the manifesto written by the shooter in the Covenant School shooting. He joins us right now with an update on that very important legal battle over the First Amendment. Michael Patrick Leahy, good to have you on the show, my friend. Good to see you.
John, great to be with you. We are plaintiffs in two cases. One in federal court. We're suing the FBI to get the Covenant Killer Manifesto. A collection of writings said that the Audrey Elizabeth Hale, a 28-year-old woman who identified as a transgender male, who killed 6 innocent Nashvillians on March 27th, she left behind a bunch of documents. And the Metro Nashville Police Department collected them, shared them with the FBI. They are not releasing them at all. And we sued the FBI to get those documents released in federal court. We've also sued in state court, Metro Nashville government, to get the documents released. The state court has a couple of other plaintiffs, the Tennessee Firearms Association, a Tennessee state senator, the Tennessee, and a couple others. That case has really gone through a very convoluted process. We sued in May, and late May, a group of parents from Covenant School and Covenant Church and the Covenant School itself sued in Chancery Court in Tennessee to be allowed to intervene in the case. Now, Tennessee Public Records Act provides no opportunity for that. But the judge there ruled that they could intervene in the case and be heard. And then what happened on that, John, is we appealed that to the Court of Appeals here in the state of Tennessee. And yesterday, they agreed with the Chancery Court. And frankly, they invented a right that does not exist in the Tennessee Public Records Act. We may appeal that directly to the Tennessee Supreme Court.
Wow, big stuff.
Michael, I wanted to ask you specifically about the case against the FBI, because the FBI came back and said that you are seeking extraordinary and unprecedented discovery. I know that you are requesting these documents for reporting purposes, but I also think that for these types of instances and these tragedies to be prevented in the future, it starts with understanding these documents, doesn't it?
You're exactly right, Amanda. And what's interesting about this, there was a case just reported of a 48-year-old transgender male who identified basically as a male and was transitioning to female, who was arrested for making charges and threats against children in Illinois. That individual, according to the local sheriff in Perry County, Illinois, said that the transgender shooter here in Nashville was his hero. So this whole copycat idea is totally debunked by that action. What they're claiming, but that the FBI is claiming that this would be, unprecedented, is absolutely wrong. Every other major shooting situation, the documents have been released. In this case, why are the documents not being released? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, because the shooter identifies as a transgender, and also because we suspect there may be some information that the school doesn't want out. We don't know exactly because it's not been released.
Remarkable. We all can benefit from this. This isn't about shaming. It's about learning how we can better prevent these things in the future. And it looks like government is trying to prevent us from doing that. Now, there was a leak of a small portion of this manifesto a week or two ago. I think some officers were later placed on leave. But tell us what we can learn from that little snippet of information that came out that might tell us what else is in the manifesto.
Yeah, that snippet of photographs of 3 pages of these documents was chilling. I mean, it showed a young woman who was filled with hatred for children there, and hatred for basically people that did not support her transition to being a transgender male. And it was a very vicious set of ideas that she set forward. And it was totally contrary with what people at Metro Nashville Police Department have said about it. They've said these documents don't show any motivations. These 3 documents that were released and demonstrate something exactly opposite of that, John.
Wow, that's very important.
Michael, I happen to know that you are very similar to my co-host in that you never have just one story that you're running with, and you've got a lot of pots that you are watching about to boil. What are some of these other stories that you bring to your readers?
Well, John, this is interesting. I just did an exclusive interview with a member of the Tennessee House of Representatives who on his own went to Israel and saw what happened there. And he has a very specific set of proposals that he's going to come back with. I'll let him say what they are. But his intent was to demonstrate to the people of Israel that the people of Tennessee support Israel. So that's one of the stories that we're working on in Tennessee. And of course, in Arizona, the Arizona Sun-Times, we've been reporting on the out-of-control behavior of the barely elected by 281 votes Attorney General Chris Mays, who now has got a grand jury to indict 2 Cochise County supervisors for basically just following the law and making sure those elections in 2022 were honestly conducted. So those are the big stories that we're working on at the Star News Network right now, Amanda.
Pretty remarkable. Michael Patrick Lee, real quickly, how do people follow the great work of the Star News Network?
Go to TennesseeStar.com, TennesseeStar.com for the Tennessee stories, and in Arizona, ArizonaSunTimes.com. And for all of our 14 sites, go to thestarnewsnetwork.com.
All right, folks, boy, this one came to an end quickly. I guess that's what happens when you're having a good time. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back tomorrow night with, Monday with regular programming, but Sunday, be sure to tune into our Lost Voices of Fentanyl special right here on Real America's Voice, 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon.